And so we literally came back from school, climbed on our ponies, two different phases as a child, by loving this or
The royal walls are trembling, not from an outside threat or political scandal, but from a confrontation so personal, so raw, that it sent Buckingham Palace into absolute shock. In a rare, explosive moment, King Charles allegedly shouted down the very woman he once risked everything for, Queen Camilla. The reason? A missing royal heirloom. But what started as a search for a ring quickly unraveled into something far more devastating. A collapse in trust, a fracture in power, and a monarchy teetering on emotional chaos. And at the center of it all, a single piece of jewelry with a legacy far heavier than gold. To the average person, it might have looked like nothing more than a pinky ring. But to King Charles, it was a sacred relic, a piece of his soul. Forged from rare Welsh gold and etched with the historic crest of the Prince of Wales. The ring had been passed down through generations of royalty. His father, Prince Philip, wore it with pride. And before him, Prince Andrew of Greece and Denmark. Charles had worn it daily since the 1970s. It was more than tradition. It was memory. It was duty. And when it vanished shortly after his coronation, it wasn't just an accessory that had gone missing. It was identity. It was legacy. And its disappearance would set off a chain reaction no one saw coming. The search began quietly but urgently. Palace security reviewed every hallway camera. Servants and aides were questioned behind closed doors. Rooms were turned upside down. But one person seemed curiously unmoved, Queen Camilla. While Charles reportedly walked the palace halls in visible distress, Camilla went about her day like nothing had happened. She attended meetings, smiled at cameras, never once acknowledged the unfolding crisis. To some, she appeared composed. To others, cold. But either way, the silence was loud. Why didn't she ask questions? Why didn't she help search? For a woman so closely tied to the king's world, her distance raised more than eyebrows. It sparked suspicions. To understand the tension, we have to rewind. When Camilla became queen consort, her role was meant to be symbolic, supportive, not leading. But behind palace doors, that narrative quietly began to shift. Camilla started attending events alone. She gave unsanctioned interviews, made decisions without consulting the king or his advisors. Then came the moment that made insiders gasp. The official royal website quietly changed her title. Gone was Queen Consort. She was now listed simply as Queen. A small change on paper, but in royal protocol, it was seismic. Queen Elizabeth II had made it explicitly clear Camilla was to remain Queen Consort. So why the change? Was this Camilla stepping into power or stepping over the line? What happened next blew the lid off the royal tension. Camilla gave a lengthy, personal interview to a major media outlet. No warning, no approval from Charles. In it, she outlined her own vision for the monarchy, speaking as though she were leading it herself. She even disclosed private conversations with the king, including plans he believed were confidential. For Charles, it was more than a breach of protocol. It was betrayal. He didn't voice it publicly, but those close to him say he was blindsided. For a monarch who spent decades cultivating discretion, this public power move from his own wife cut deep. And the damage didn't stop there. The morning after the interview aired, the palace was thick with tension. Camilla had not returned the night before. No one knew where she'd gone. Charles, usually composed, was visibly agitated. Messages were sent, calls ignored, and when Camilla finally did return, stone-faced, silent, the king had reached his limit. Witnesses say she walked into the room where he was waiting, ignoring greetings from staff, and without hesitation, Charles confronted her. No diplomacy, no filter. He accused her of overstepping, of betrayal, of disregarding everything they had built. And then came the final blow. He demanded to know who took the pinky ring. Camilla didn't flinch. She reached into her handbag, pulled it out, and placed it on the table. Then, in a voice as calm as ice, she said, "What belongs to the king is mine." That single sentence shattered years of fragile balance. Camilla's words weren't just bold. They were a declaration. For her, the ring wasn't stolen. It was claimed, a token of her identity within the royal machine. But for Charles, it was unforgivable. He had never offered her that ring for a reason. It wasn't about marital trust. It was about heritage. That ring wasn't a gift. It was a weight he carried, one that didn't belong to anyone else. And for Camilla to take it, to keep it hidden, then to return it only after confrontation, it signaled something far deeper. She wasn't asking for recognition. She was taking it. And in that moment, Charles didn't see a partner. He saw a rival. Since that confrontation, the palace hasn't been the same. Camilla has quietly stepped back from several public duties. No press release. No explanation. Just absence. Meanwhile, Charles has retreated inward. He's reportedly taken back control of duties Camilla once handled, vetting events, personally reviewing his public schedule, and leaning more heavily on longtime aides. And the ring? It hasn't been seen since. Charles has it back, sources say, but he no longer wears it. For a man who once wore it daily, its absence says more than words ever could. Some believe it's his way of mourning, not just the ring, but the trust it symbolized. Others say it's a silent protest, a statement that even legacy can be tainted by betrayal. Inside Buckingham, conversations are reportedly shifting. Not about divorce, not yet, but about redefined roles. A quiet restructuring of power, away from a united monarchy toward a divided one. One where the king rules and the queen appears separately. For the public, the image is already fractured. Charles and Camilla, once seen side by side at nearly every event, now make fewer joint appearances. Gone are the glances, the symbolic closeness. In its place, silence. Staff describe a changed atmosphere. Shorter meetings, colder exchanges, and a rhythm that feels out of sync. Even the most experienced courtiers can feel it. Something's broken. And the question now isn't whether it can be repaired, but whether either of them wants to. Royal insiders have quietly revealed that advisors have begun to subtly manage their schedules differently, keeping Charles and Camilla apart even within the palace walls. Events that previously demanded the presence of both are now discreetly reorganized to minimize tension. Rumors swirl among the staff, some suggesting this careful choreography isn't just about public optics, but rather about avoiding confrontations behind closed doors. As each day passes, it grows increasingly clear that the facade of unity is slipping further from reach, leaving a monarchy hanging in an uncertain balance. In the end, it wasn't a scandal leaked to the press. It wasn't a secret child or a financial misstep. It was a ring, a single heirloom that exposed a rift years in the making. And the silence that followed? That was louder than any press statement could be. For a monarchy that depends on unity, tradition, and appearances, this quiet fracture could prove more damaging than anything shouted from the tabloids. Because if the king and queen are no longer aligned behind palace doors, what does that mean for the future of the crown? As rumors swirl and appearances shift, one thing is certain. This story is far from over. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're curious about what is coming next, make sure to subscribe.